So in 2013, I became the Chief Technology Officer of the Department of Veterans Affairs, which, as some of you may know, is the largest healthcare system in the world. With this job, I was given a very small, job title and responsibility. Marina, it's your job to redefine the art of the possible for how America honors and serves its veterans. No big deal. And to do this, I was given 0 headcount and $0 of budget. The first thing I did when I was in my office was I tried to get a dry erase board, which I was going to use to map out how I was going to redefine this art of the possible. And I was told that my $99 office supply budget was not enough to afford a government dry erase board, so I couldn't have one. As I sat at my desk thinking, what am I going to do? I stared at a pile of paper clips, which was literally all that I had to my name at the time. And I was reminded of this story of this blogger who, through a succession of trades, traded a regular red paperclip for a house that he subsequently lived in for many years until it became such a tourist attraction that he had to move out. And so I was thinking, how am I going to use these paper clips? How am I going to trade up so I get some resources to do this seemingly impossible job? And at that moment, the head of the executive secretary pool popped her head at my office, and she said, "Hey, Marina, have you seen Greenpack 42? And I said, "I don't know what that is, but I have nothing else to do. I'll help you find it." So we wandered around this 12-story enormous office building looking for Greenpack 42. And all that a Greenpack was when a member of Congress would write a letter to the VA, it would go in a green folder, and somebody would put a number on it. And then everybody that wanted to weigh in on our official response would get a hold of it and kind of handwrite their edits in. It quickly became apparent to me that all exec did all day was wander around looking for these folders. So I said, I can help with this. I'm a technologist. And I wrote the world's smallest little app that printed a barcode on the front of the green folders. In the course of looking for Greenpack 42, on the 8th floor, we found a closet of unused barcode scanners. So I passed those out, and I called my little invention Folder Finder because I like alliteration. But exec called it M-Boop, M for Marina, and boop for the sound that it made when people checked in the folders on their desk. And now I was like a tech wizard to some of the most important people in any organization, which is the executive secretary pool. And I was like, okay, I have a little bit of political capital. What can I use it for? And they started helping me get appointments, like choice primo spots on the calendar of my fellow executives that I used to kind of introduce myself and lay out what I was hoping to do. A few months later, I got to make my first paperclip trade of substance. You guys heard about healthcare.gov, right? How that went super well. The VA was going to launch the next website that President Obama was going to announce a month after healthcare.gov. And at the time, people trusted the VA to do approximately nothing. So launching the first website was definitely not gonna fly. And a thing that they had learned from healthcare.gov was before you launch a website, you should do something called load testing, which is you test how many people can concurrently view the website at once before it crashes. So the VA did this, and it crashed at 8 people. Not great. Someone from exec was in that room, though, and they said, ooh, Marina can print barcodes. Maybe Marina can help with this problem, too. So I got invited to my first meeting and asked to do my first, something official. And I said, yeah. So I pulled together a couple of colleagues I had found in a couple of other agencies. We put the tool on a different web hosting environment. They tried to load test it again. This time it crashed the load testing computer, which was a better sign. I had to swear to White House comms on my non-existent firstborn that the website would not crash if President Obama announced it. They trusted me, but it worked. He announced it, website did not crash, and I had some amazing political capital. Over the course of my 5 years at the VA, I was able to trade those paper clips into something that when I left, I had a team of 75, I had tens of millions of dollars of budget, and last year, the VA won a Sammy, which is like the federal government Grammys, for having the best digital experience of the entire federal government. But that all came through a succession of paperclip trades. Again, I started with literally nothing and couldn't even get a dry erase board. So I tell that story to encourage you to think about what are you good at? What skills might you have that you could trade up, down, around to get the resources that you need to do the job that you're trying to do? Maybe you're great at event planning. Maybe you're great at speech writing. Maybe you're great at project management. Like, you have skills, and you may be surprised as you try to make your paperclip trades how you may be able to trade them for more and more resources. On that line, has anybody read Cat's Cradle by Kurt Vonnegut? Okay, so there's a concept in the book called the Karass. And a Karass is people that God has hidden around the planet to accomplish a goal together. I use this term in a more secular way. And I think a lot of us, right, we're stuck in bureaucracies, we're feeling stuck, we're in an organization, and it's easy to say, there's people around here, they're slow rolling me. That procurement team is getting in my way. They are stopping me, they are trying to keep budget, they're not prioritizing my paperwork. Sometimes that's true, but I think a much more productive way of approaching an organization is that there are people around hidden that are there to help you accomplish your goal, and it is your job to find them. And I learned this lesson early on in my VA paperclip trades. I had my chance to get my first budget ever. It was going to be from $0 to millions of dollars, which I really needed to get any kind of work done. To do that, though, I had to move 1,000 pages of articles off an old website before the contract expired so I could recoup some of the cost savings. That doesn't sound like a particularly complicated thing, except it was just me, and I did not have enough hours in the day to move 1,000 articles from one place to another. I'm complaining about this to Simon, the security guard on the 12th floor, when it occurs to me, Simon has a computer and some time on his hands. So I say, hey, Simon, how would you like to learn to code HTML? And he says, oh, absolutely, I'll come at lunch. He came at lunch with the security guards from the other 11 floors. They crushed my deadline. I had millions of dollars of budget now, and the VA had 12 fewer security guards because they all left for IT jobs. But at that point, right now, I have the executive secretary team that have gone to bat for me, that have helped me find my first win. I have the security guards that have helped me get millions of dollars of budget out of the goodness of their hearts. And that really taught me that, like, the people that are in your Karass are truly in unexpected places, but the power of bringing everyone together is unmatched. By the time I left the VA, we called our Karass the Grilled Cheese Club. We would convene once a month. We would definitely not make grilled cheese on George Foreman grills because that would violate fire codes. We definitely did not drink red wine out of Dixie cups in the middle of the workday. But every month I would demo to a whole variety of people. They were from procurement, from legal, from custodial. Hey, here's what we're up to. And that had many advantages, but two to mention. One was when you get all those different people's perspective, they can point out barriers or opportunities that you won't see on your own, right? Someone that's on a budgeting team can be like, oh, did you know that there's actually this other pool of money that you might be able to apply to if you use this particular language? The other thing is the laws of physics mean you can only be in one place at one time. So when your allies in the Grilled Cheese Club and your Karass can be in that meeting where someone is saying, well, of course Marina got that done. She's cutting through red tape. She's violating the rules. She's not following the paperwork. That person could say, actually, she is. And here's a little update on what her work is so that it can kind of help squash those myths around. So I encourage you to look around and find your Karass. So looking between the silos, my book has 56 tactics in it, and this is my favorite because it's the one I use every day. This is probably not news to you that the larger, the more storied, the older your bureaucracy is, the more siloed it is. It can feel like certain siloed teams have like a sentry posted at the door that's like, you better stay out of here. Do not come in. Do not propose changes. We're just fine over here. But the space when things are handed off between steps, between teams, between departments, between agencies, is often not just completely undefended, but completely unnoticed. And if you can follow a real RFP, a real claim, a real person, a real application through a real process from start to finish, you will find rich opportunities between the silos where you can start making changes, you can start earning political capital, you can start trading those paper clips so that you have the resources that then later on you can make a more challenging pitch to the siloed team itself. And my favorite story here is from my work in foster care. So the thing that I do right now with many states is I help streamline the foster parent application process. This is really important because in a lot of states, there are babies and toddlers that sleep on the floor of the office while their grandparent tries to navigate a Byzantine 300-day paperwork process to get that child in their home. So streamlining it and making it shorter is critical to getting these kids out of the office and into homes. Thank you, it's important. And the only way I know how to do this work is I follow it. So I'm following an application in a particular state from start to finish. And at some point I get to a woman whose job is to request the applicant's driving record from the DMV. And she pulls out a carbon copy form. Is everybody old enough to know what those are? And she is complaining to me the entire time. The DMV is in the 19th century. Why are they making me fill out this form? I have to get a stamp. Who even has stamps? Like, this sucks. I hate this. I did what this woman was not empowered to do, though, is I went and talked my way past the security guard at the DMV and said, hey, I really need to see how you guys fulfill driving record requests. And so I sit down with the woman there, and she says, oh, yeah, absolutely. I pull in the requests here in my electronic system on the left-hand side. Then I fulfill them in about an hour. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Where does the carbon copy form fill in? And she says, oh, my God, you were at child welfare. Those people live in the 19th century. Why do they keep sending me this form when they could just email me instead? I was like, please hold. Ran back across the street, connected these two incredibly well-intentioned, incredibly well-meaning, hard-working civil servants, shaved 32 days off the foster parent application process. And everybody is happier, right? There was no defense against changing that step. It was that nobody owned the end-to-end process, and therefore it was nobody's job to identify that this process change had happened. So I cannot encourage this enough, no matter what your role is. Frankly, even if it's something that has nothing to do with your job, if you are curious about it, see how far you can follow a real claim application person, and I mean follow it. If it goes through a fax machine, you show up on the other side of the fax machine. If you have to talk your way past a security guard, talk your way past a security guard. But really try to understand the nuances, because then that'll start surfacing solutions to you pretty quickly. So the next thing doesn't sound particularly exciting, but it's something very few people actually do, which is try the normal way first. It sounds like this crowd loves procurement. That is the vibe I'm getting so far. Okay, I hear you. But things like procurement or hiring are two things that I hear people say, it's broken, it's super broken, and then they don't try. They believe that it is broken. And the problem with that is it might not be as broken as you think. When I was at the VA, I spent 2.5 years hiring my first person, which sounds pretty painful. But because we went through the normal way first, and I understood exactly every step where something was failing at resume review, how long each piece was taking, I was able to go back to HR and actually make an argument for the first time that there were broken steps. My original arguments fell on totally deaf ears. I was like, cool people don't use USA jobs. And they were like, clearly lots of people use USA jobs, right? Cool people don't have a federal resume. Clearly lots of people have a federal resume, Marina, because they're applying on USA jobs every day with it. So you go away with your complaining. But when I was able to show, I had 20 of the world's best technologists apply for a technology job, and I was able to show they couldn't get past resume review. And it was because there had been a longstanding belief that only HR professionals could review resumes for everybody, for psychiatrists, for medical center directors, for technologists. At the resume review, that was when I lost my 20 of the world's best technologists, couldn't get through that step. So then we were able to go back and say, is this actually a rule? And it turns out it was not. It was not a rule, it was not a law, it was not a policy, it was just the way things had always been done. And so that, because we couldn't point to a source of why they were doing that, they were open to trying it my way, which was have a technologist review other technologists' resumes. And since then, this is now how the entire federal government does hiring. Psychiatrists review other psychiatrists' resumes. Procurement officials review other procurement officials' resumes. So encourage, but I would never have found that if I had tried to blow up hiring. Similarly, on procurement. So when I started at the VA, the one piece of advice I was given was I should drive to Eatontown, New Jersey, and take the procurement team out to lunch. I am a shy introvert, so I really dwelled on this way longer than I should have. I was like, how do I even know what they want to eat for lunch? And do they want to have lunch with me? I don't know. Eventually, life circumstances led me to go to New Jersey. I didn't buy them lunch, but I sat down with the procurement team at lunch. And as I got to know them just as humans, and I was trying to explain what I was trying to do, and I learned what they were trying to do, we then made it a team policy that we did all our procurements in person together in New Jersey. And that, I think, really transformed it. It helped me understand what are the rules of procurement, what are the steps, what could be sped up, what really can't be sped up. And they also understood the mission that we were working on at the VA and how this seemingly innocuous procurement for cloud computing was going to enable 800,000 veterans to get health care. And that kind of relationship really helped. It became a signal of our team. If you had a coffee cup from the Rook coffee shop, which was the only coffee shop in Eatontown, New Jersey, that became like a symbol that you had been with the procurement team. So just encourage you, I know procurement doesn't sound fun, and hiring doesn't, and there's plenty of challenges that we have, but if you actually try the process, you may be surprised at what you can get done, or you may be surprised that when you find the particular problem, like I did with who could do resume reviews, it might be easier to solve than you think. No promises, but it's definitely worth trying. So this is a tactic I don't talk about a lot in talks, but I felt like it might resonate with this crowd. Bureaucracies are not people. Bureaucracies do not have emotions. They cannot be persuaded. However, bureaucracies are made up entirely of people who can have emotions and who can be persuaded. And a challenge that I see a lot with change agents is that they try to make the bureaucracy care. Bureaucracies cannot care. They are not capable of it. But what can happen is that if you understand the decision-making process of the bureaucracy, you can make the people involved in that decision-making process care. An example here came from the pandemic. There was an office in a particular state that focused on older foster kids. In all but one state, you may know that if you're ages 18 to 21, you can stay in foster care with some support from your social worker, even though you're technically living on your own without foster parents. And this team was like really great, really connected to their 800 or so kiddos, and they kept this list in the office. This worked fine until you couldn't go in the office anymore, right? So they had been trying for months and months, begging, pleading, sending photographs of their kids saying, these kids are going to be homeless, struggling, fearful. I can't get to their phone number. I need an online spreadsheet. That was their big ask, right? I need to take the list that was in the office and I need to make it an online spreadsheet. But IT doesn't have a box for how many foster children will be homeless if I do not approve this. It's not on the approval form. So you can keep making that emotional appeal, which I saw this team do, and they were destroying themselves. They were distraught, crying, et cetera. But what all IT needed was a form called the CIA triad, which means confidentiality, integrity, availability. It's a pretty common thing you might encounter in IT approvals. And I said, what we have to do is fill out this form. Explain how you're going to cover the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of this spreadsheet, and then let's move on. And that got the approval in about 10 days. Instead of the months of begging. So as you are, I'm sure you are all frustrated with IT in some way or procurement in some way, think about, are you trying to make the bureaucracy care, or are you following the bureaucracy's process? A maybe quick funny story on this, but the book opens with a story of President Obama yelling at me. Was early on in my time at VA, it was like I was mere 2 years in, and my assignment early on had been to connect one computer to another computer. Big task. Because we knew some veterans were falling through a crack when they filed their appeal. We knew they weren't making it to the end, and we needed to figure out who was missing. And an easy way to do that is say, okay, who's in system 1, who's in system 2? The delta is the missing veterans. But the people in system 2 would not let me connect to their computer because I couldn't fill out their paperwork the way that they felt I needed to do. And this got all the way up to President Obama, where I end up in a cabinet meeting and hearing him express his disappointment at my progress, which is not a thing I wish on any of you. And towards the end, he really wanted to help, right? And so he was like, what if I make a video and I tell the people at computer 2 that they have to give you the password? And I was like, oh no, like that won't work. Because there's nowhere on the form either that says the leader of the free world said, it's fine, so like just ignore the previous 17 pages. So it's really important to understand how your bureaucracy makes decisions and to leverage those, and then from there you make the human relationships to get the paperwork prioritized or have someone explain to you why you can't get through it or whatever it may be. The last thing is setting your North Star. So I don't know how one fixes the VA. I don't know how one fixes foster care. Those are my two things. I do know how one makes progress towards eating those elephants. And when I was very early on at the VA, when I still didn't have my dry erase board, I did have a bunch of Post-it notes. And myself and a couple of colleagues laid out, like, what could the VA be? Like, what if we had a team of technologists? What if you could enroll in healthcare instantly? What if you could get a disability claim decided instantly? And those became a 48-point North Star booklet that we kept. And through the dark days and years, frankly, I kept looking at that and saying, like, this is the vision, this is where we're going. And then over time, I got busy, and I stopped looking at the booklet. I had a new list of 48, 100 things. But on my very last day at the VA, I opened it and realized that we had accomplished 46 of the 48 things in it, which is pretty, thank you. So I say that, like, whatever you're working on, it is going to be hard. There are going to be steps and back steps and triple back steps. But if you lay out your North Star and where you're headed, it can really help you keep you going in the difficult times when it feels like, you know, HR and procurement and everything is against you. So good luck, and thanks for listening. And come to my power session this afternoon if you have your own bureaucracy challenges you want to work through. Thanks.